Hello everyone and welcome back to Continent Informer. If you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe, turn on notifications, like this video and share it with everyone who loves classic movies, Hollywood nostalgia and those unforgettable films that defined an era. Today we're traveling back to 1997, deep into the Amazon rainforest, where a documentary crew made the mistake of picking up a mysterious stranger and discovered that they had entered the hunting ground of one of cinema's most terrifying creatures. The movie was Anaconda, a strange, ambitious, and wonderfully entertaining creature feature that brought together a cast nobody could have expected. At the center was a young Jennifer Lopez, an emerging rapper-turned-actor named Ice Cube, veteran Hollywood legend Jon Voight, respected actor Eric Stoltz, British actor Jonathan Hyde, a young Owen Wilson, Kari Wura, Vincent Castellanos, and a supporting appearance by Danny Trejo. But here's what makes the story so interesting. When Anaconda arrived in theaters, audiences probably couldn't have predicted what would happen to several of these actors afterward. Jennifer Lopez would become a global music and movie superstar. Ice Cube would build an extraordinary second career in Hollywood. Owen Wilson would become one of the most recognizable comedic actors of his generation. Jon Voight would continue acting for decades and remain one of Hollywood's most recognizable veterans. Danny Trejo would turn supporting roles into an entire cinematic identity. And some of the other performers would continue working steadily while living much quieter lives away from the spotlight. So today we're going to revisit the characters, the actors, their transformations, their careers after Anaconda, the stars who became even bigger, the ones who chose quieter paths, and the legacy of the film more than 29 years after its original release. Before we meet the cast, let's remember what made the original movie so memorable. Anaconda follows documentary filmmaker Terry Flores and her crew as they travel deep into the Amazon in search of a mysterious indigenous community. Their journey takes a terrifying turn after they rescue Paul Cerrone, a seemingly helpful Paraguayan guide played by Jon Voight. Cerrone, however, has his own agenda. He wants to find and capture a legendary giant anaconda, and he is willing to manipulate and endanger the entire expedition to accomplish his goal. The movie combined adventure, horror, action, and dark humor, and while critics were not particularly kind to it at the time, audiences responded differently. The film earned approximately $136.8 million worldwide against a reported $45 million budget, and eventually became a 1990s cult classic. And perhaps the most fascinating thing about Anaconda today isn't even the snake. It's the cast. Because when you look at that cast list now, you realize that this supposedly simple creature feature contained several performers who would go on to have extraordinary careers. Jennifer Lopez, Terry Flores. Let's begin with the woman who would become the biggest global celebrity to emerge from the original film, Jennifer Lopez. When Jennifer Lopez played Terry Flores in Anaconda, she was still at an early stage of her movie career. She had already gained significant attention through her performance as Selena Quintanilla in Selena, but the global phenomenon that would become JLO was still developing. In Anaconda, Lopez played Terry as intelligent, determined, and courageous. Her character was the leader of the documentary expedition, and Lopez had to carry many of the film's most intense scenes. Sony itself describes the film as following the expedition headed by anthropologist Steve Kal and director Terry Flores, with Lopez leading the cast. But nobody could have predicted just how far Jennifer Lopez's career would go. Following Anaconda, Lopez expanded her acting career with movies such as Out of Sight, The Wedding Planner, Made in Manhattan, Shall We Dance?, Monster-in-Law, Hustlers, and many others. At the same time, she became one of the world's most commercially successful recording artists. Her transformation was therefore much bigger than physical appearance. The Jennifer Lopez of 1997 was a promising young actress. The Jennifer Lopez of the 2000s became a global entertainment brand. She became a singer, actress, dancer, producer, fashion figure, and performer capable of selling out major venues around the world. Looking at her in Anaconda today is fascinating because you are watching a superstar before she became the full JLO phenomenon. And that is one of the reasons the movie has aged so well. Ice Cube, Danny Rich. Next is a man whose career transformation may be almost as remarkable as Lopez's. Ice Cube played Danny Rich, the documentary crew's cameraman. When Anaconda was released, Ice Cube was already famous, but not primarily as an actor. He had first become internationally known through music and his involvement with NWA, becoming one of the most influential figures in hip-hop. His transition from rapper to Hollywood actor was still developing. In Anaconda, audiences got an early look at Ice Cube's ability to bring personality and charisma to a major movie role. The film's official description identifies him as the cameraman Danny Rich accompanying Terry's expedition. And then his acting career exploded. Ice Cube appeared in movies including Friday, Three Kings, Barbershop, XXX, State of the Union, Are We There Yet?, 21 Jump Street, and many others. He also became a producer and continued working in music. By 2026, Ice Cube represents one of the most successful transitions from hip-hop into mainstream Hollywood. He didn't abandon his musical identity. Instead, he built another career alongside it. And when you watch Anaconda today, it becomes easy to forget that the man holding the camera was already a major cultural figure and was about to become an even bigger movie star. Jon Voight, Paul Cerrone. Now we arrive at perhaps the most unforgettable performance in the entire movie. Jon Voight as Paul Cerrone. If you ask fans what they remember most about Anaconda, many won't immediately mention the snake. They'll mention Jon Voight. His performance was deliberately exaggerated, strange, menacing, and theatrical. Voight turned Paul Cerrone into a character audiences could not take their eyes off. Even Ice Cube's official filmography describes Voight's performance as a flamboyant, villainous portrayal that in many instances outshines the snake sequences. But the incredible thing is that Voight was already an established Hollywood legend when he made the movie. He had won the Academy Award for Best Actor for Coming Home and had spent decades building an impressive resume. Anaconda therefore wasn't the movie that made Jon Voight famous. It was something more interesting. It showed that an accomplished dramatic actor could completely embrace an outrageous genre performance. And after Anaconda, Voight continued working extensively. He appeared in films such as Enemy of the State, Pearl Harbor, Lara Croft, Tomb Raider, Ali, National Treasure, Transformers, and numerous television productions. He also became widely known as the father of actress Angelina Jolie, although his professional legacy existed long before his family connection became part of public discussion. As of 2026, Jon Voight remains one of the surviving major stars of the original Anaconda cast. And his transformation is fascinating. The young actor from his early Hollywood years became an elder statesman of American cinema. Yet for an entire generation of movie fans, one of his most unforgettable images remains that bizarre smile aboard the Amazon riverboat. Eric Stoltz, Dr. Stephen Cal. Then we have Eric Stoltz, who played Dr. Stephen Cal. Stoltz was already an experienced actor when Anaconda arrived. He had appeared in major films and had established himself as a serious dramatic performer. His role as Cal gave the movie an element of scientific credibility. He was the anthropologist who helped lead the expedition before the situation spiraled out of control. Sony identifies Stoltz's character as the anthropologist heading the expedition alongside Terry Flores. But perhaps what makes Stoltz's career especially interesting is how he expanded beyond acting. He continued appearing in movies and television, but he also became increasingly involved in directing television episodes. For audiences who remember him primarily from Anaconda, his later career demonstrates that being a successful actor doesn't necessarily mean remaining constantly visible as a Hollywood celebrity. Sometimes the most interesting transformations happen behind the camera. Jonathan Hyde, Warren Westridge. Now let's talk about Jonathan Hyde, who played Warren Westridge. Hyde brought a distinctly theatrical presence to the movie. His character was the narrator and production leader of the documentary expedition. But Anaconda wasn't Hyde's biggest role or even his most famous adventure film. That same year, audiences also saw him in another massive 1990s movie, Titanic. He portrayed Bruce Ismay, the wealthy chairman of the White Star Line. He was also famous for Jumanji, where he played both Samuel Parrish and the terrifying Hunter Van Pelt. That means Jonathan Hyde was part of not one but several iconic 1990s adventure movies. When you look back at the decade, his face appears in films that defined childhood and blockbuster cinema for millions of people. And that's why Anaconda is such an interesting time capsule. The movie wasn't simply filled with unknown actors. It contained performers who were already working across major Hollywood productions. Owen Wilson, Gary Dixon. Now comes one of the biggest surprises. Owen Wilson. In Anaconda, Wilson played Gary Dixon, the sound technician of the documentary crew. At the time, he was still relatively early in his acting career. Today, he is one of Hollywood's most recognizable comedy stars. His later career exploded through films such as Zoolander, Shanghai Noon, Wedding Crashers, Marley and Me, Night at the Museum, Cars, The Internship, and many others. Wilson's voice performance as Lightning McQueen in Pixar's Cars introduced him to an entirely new generation. His career transformation is therefore extraordinary. The Owen Wilson we see in Anaconda is not yet the laid-back comedy superstar audiences would eventually know. He's younger, less recognizable, and playing a relatively small supporting role. Yet the distinctive personality that would later become his trademark is already there. A few years later, audiences would see Wilson become one of the defining faces of Hollywood comedy. Kari Wura, Denise Kalberg. Kari Wura played Denise Kalberg, the production manager. While she never reached the global celebrity status of Jennifer Lopez or Owen Wilson, Wura maintained a steady career across film and television. She appeared in genre productions, television shows, and voice work. One interesting aspect of her career is that she became especially associated with horror, science fiction, and action-oriented projects. For fans revisiting Anaconda, her performance represents one of the film's supporting characters who helped make the expedition feel like a functioning production team rather than simply a collection of actors waiting to encounter a snake. Vincent Castellanos, Mateo. Vincent Castellanos portrayed Mateo. His role was smaller, but his character became part of the expedition's increasingly dangerous journey. Castellanos continued acting after Anaconda, appearing in television and film projects. Unlike the major stars of the cast, he maintained a relatively lower public profile. And that is something we often forget when discussing Hollywood. Not every actor who appears in a successful movie becomes a household name. Many performers build long careers through supporting roles, guest appearances, and smaller productions. Castellanos represents that side of the entertainment industry. Danny Trejo, the poacher. And then there is Danny Trejo. Trejo's appearance in Anaconda is relatively small, but his presence is impossible to miss. He played the poacher, appearing early in the movie and helping establish the dangerous world surrounding the expedition. Trejo's career after Anaconda became enormous. He developed one of the most recognizable screen personas in Hollywood, appearing in hundreds of films and television productions. His tough appearance made him a natural choice for criminals, assassins, gangsters, soldiers, and intimidating characters. But Trejo's real-life story is far more complicated than the tough guy image he often portrayed. Over the years, he became known not only as an actor but also for his restaurants, memoir, community work, and efforts to encourage people facing difficult circumstances. His career demonstrates that a performer doesn't need to be the lead actor to become an unforgettable cultural icon. Frank Welker played the voice of the Anaconda. And now, perhaps the least visible but one of the most important performers. Frank Welker. Welker provided the voice effects associated with the Anaconda. For decades, Welker has been one of the most prolific voice actors in entertainment. Audiences may not always recognize his face, but they have heard his work in countless animated movies, television shows, and productions. His career illustrates an important truth about Hollywood. Sometimes the performers with the biggest impact aren't the ones whose faces appear on screen. When we compare the Anaconda cast of 1997 with the performers we know today, the transformations are remarkable. Jennifer Lopez went from rising actress to global entertainment superstar. Ice Cube went from celebrated rapper and emerging actor to established Hollywood producer, actor, and cultural icon. Owen Wilson went from a relatively unknown supporting performer to a major comedy and family film star. Jon Voight went from veteran actor to an even more established Hollywood elder. Jonathan Hyde continued appearing in major films and television productions. Danny Trejo became one of the most recognizable character actors in American cinema. Eric Stoltz expanded his work behind the camera. Kari Wura continued building a career across genres. Vincent Castellanos maintained a quieter acting career. And Frank Welker continued creating voices and sounds for generations of audiences. That is an extraordinary collection of careers from one 1997 film. If we had to identify the single biggest transformation, however, Jennifer Lopez would be difficult to overlook. When she entered the Amazon as Terry Flores, she was a young actress establishing herself. Today, she is a global entertainment brand. She successfully crossed music, film, television, dance, fashion, and business. The contrast between Terry Flores and modern JLo demonstrates just how much can change in a Hollywood career over nearly 3 decades. And Anaconda occupies an important place in that journey. But if we are talking about unexpected career trajectories, Owen Wilson deserves special attention. Nobody watching him as Gary Dixon in 1997 could necessarily predict that he would become the voice of Lightning McQueen, star of major comedies, dramatic films, and blockbuster franchises. His career demonstrates how an actor can start in a relatively small genre film and eventually become one of the most recognizable personalities in Hollywood. Then there is Jon Voight. The snake may have been the movie's title character, but Voight's Paul Cerrone became the human face of danger. His performance has become part of the movie's cult appeal. Decades later, people still remember the strange accent, the intense stare, the unpredictable behavior, and the way he seemed almost as fascinated by the snake as the audience was. It was a performance that embraced the movie's absurdity rather than fighting it. And that is exactly why it worked. At the time of release, Anaconda received mixed reviews. Rotten Tomatoes currently lists the film at 41% from critics, illustrating how divided the critical response remained. But critical opinion doesn't always determine a movie's long-term cultural impact. Audiences remembered the giant snake. They remembered the Amazon. They remembered Jennifer Lopez before she became JLo. They remembered Ice Cube's early Hollywood career. They remembered Owen Wilson before he became a major comedy star. And above all, they remembered Jon Voight's extraordinary performance. Over time, Anaconda became the kind of film people rediscover. The kind of movie that may not have been considered a masterpiece when it arrived but becomes increasingly entertaining because of nostalgia. The success of the original film eventually led to sequels and additional entries in the franchise, expanding the concept beyond the original cast. But the 1997 film remains special because of its ensemble. It captured a moment when several careers were at dramatically different stages. Jennifer Lopez was rising. Ice Cube was transitioning. Owen Wilson was beginning. Jon Voight was already established. Danny Trejo was building his iconic character actor identity. Jonathan Hyde was appearing in major adventure films. And the rest of the ensemble helped create the atmosphere that made the movie work, and there is another reason Anaconda has returned to the spotlight. A new Anaconda project has generated renewed interest in the original, with a new ensemble including Jack Black, Paul Rudd, and Thandie Newton reported in connection with the reboot. That means a new generation may discover the 1997 movie for the first time. And when they do, they may be shocked to see the cast. Jennifer Lopez before becoming one of the biggest names in entertainment. Ice Cube before decades of Hollywood success. Owen Wilson before his comedy superstardom. And Jon Voight delivering one of the strangest villain performances of the 1990s. So, if we were ranking the original Anaconda cast by their eventual career impact, Jennifer Lopez would obviously be near the top. Owen Wilson would follow closely because of his enormous comedy and family film career. Ice Cube deserves enormous recognition for successfully establishing himself in both music and Hollywood. Jon Voight remains one of the most accomplished actors in the entire cast, with a career extending far beyond the movie. Danny Trejo became a legendary character actor. Jonathan Hyde continued appearing in major productions. Eric Stoltz maintained a respected career in both acting and directing. Kari Wura, Vincent Castellanos and Frank Welker each continued contributing to entertainment in their own ways. But the beauty of Anaconda is that every performer contributed something different, and so, after more than 2 decades, the question isn't really what happened to the Anaconda cast. The better question is what they became. Jennifer Lopez became an international superstar. Ice Cube became a Hollywood institution. Owen Wilson became a comedy and family film favorite. Jon Voight remained a major acting presence. Jonathan Hyde continued his journey through film and television. Danny Trejo became one of the most recognizable character actors of his generation. Eric Stoltz expanded his career behind the camera. And the rest of the ensemble continued their own journeys, some publicly and some quietly. That is what makes movies so fascinating. When Anaconda was released in 1997, audiences saw a group of people trapped in the Amazon with a giant snake. But almost 30 years later, we see something completely different. We see a snapshot of Hollywood history. We see careers before they became famous. We see stars before they became superstars. And we see performers whose lives continued long after the cameras stopped rolling in the Amazon. If you enjoyed this journey, don't forget to subscribe to Continent Informer, like this video, share it with other movie lovers, and turn on notifications for more Where Are They Now? Documentaries. And tell us in the comments, which Anaconda cast member surprised you the most? Jennifer Lopez, Ice Cube, Jon Voight, Owen Wilson, Danny Trejo, Jonathan Hyde, or Eric Stoltz? Until next time, this is Continent Informer, bringing you the stories behind the stars, the movies, and the unforgettable moments that